three-time, that sucks. This is Mark Belton, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West. We're here with three-time World's Strongest Man champion, Brian Shaw.
Awesome, man. Glad to be here.
And we can't have a video without Silent Mike in it because yesterday he got upset, he ran off, and he did.
I watched Star Wars.
Watch Star Wars.
I ate 2 buckets of popcorn too.
He wanted to be,
Wow.
He wanted to be part of the deadlift video. He told me he couldn't be. And he said, screw you guys, I'm going to see Star Wars.
And then me and the internet rebelled, and now we're back.
Yeah, now he's
back. Yeah.
So Brian's going to teach us about overhead pressing. And first we're just going to have Mike, or Brian's going to talk Mike through some overhead pressing and kind of what he's looking for in terms of general technique.
So with overhead press, obviously with strongman, we have to press a lot of different implements overhead. And right now we're just going to go with a regular barbell. This is for somebody that really just wants to get better.
Be jacked and jacked.
Yeah, just jacked, have bigger shoulders, whatever. So, you know, you can get a lot done with a normal barbell, which is nice. So there's a lot of variety. Really with overhead press, as far as like the grip on the bar, that's kind of the first place to start. So you don't really want to be necessarily too narrow, but for overhead pressing, you don't want to be too wide either. So it's typically it's going to be about shoulder width apart is what you're going to.
Okay.
So let's have you get in here and.
So my shoulders are kind of here. What do you think?
You're skewed. You're puffed up like too much. So, all right. So basically, like somewhere right in there is going to be good. I would go a little bit wider, but obviously I'm a little bit wider. So it's just kind of one of those things where you're going to find a comfortable position for you. Some guys really prefer to have more, like a little bit more of a narrow grip to kind of recruit, like get their shoulders into it a little bit different angle, but it's kind of a comfort thing. It's kind of like with bench press, same thing. Like some guys are going to prefer to go a little bit wider, a little bit more narrow. So this is very much the same thing when you're going overhead. So if you find where you're comfortable there.
With the thumbs on, thumbs off?
I always lift with my thumbs around the bar, like non-suicide grip. So it's just kind of one of those things, like as the bar goes over your head, if you have a thumbless grip, there's a lot more chance of it coming out, especially once you start to get some leg drive.
What are we trying to do at the start of the lift? Are we trying to pinch the elbows in a little bit, or what are we trying to do from the very beginning here?
Really, like it's going to start, especially when you're standing up, it's going to start with your base. So right now, take your feet a little bit wider, Mike. So you're going to start with like a more athletic base to press overhead, because if your feet are too narrow, your balance is not going to be as good. So you want to have a stable base, kind of probably something a little bit more narrow than you would squat with, but something a little bit wider than just like if you were normally standing. So like kind of a solid base there. Don't want the knees to be locked out. So you're going to like be soft, just soft. Like if you were going to start a good morning, same position, right?
I think everybody understands. You mentioned athletic position.
Just get in an athletic position. So the core, like through the hips, you're going to stay tight. Core is going to stay tight. So like everything coming up, because really the energy for overhead press is going to come from the floor. Yeah.
How'd that feel?
I kind of touched more of the side, and you just went right for the ass cheek. Really want to take an athletic stance with overhead pressing, because everything is going to start with that. So really having more of an athletic stance and not really having the knees locked out, not being too narrow, not being overly wide. Right. So somewhere neutral, really. And like this is really good where you're at. Like you're already tight, and you've already got like your hips locked in. Your core is going to stay tight, so you're really not like you're always going to want to have a good breath before you go to press, right? Yeah. Like that's just kind of a general rule with this. So if you can, and this is now a lot of this is going to come down to shoulder girdle. How flexible are you to get the bar down? So like, can you get the bar down to your chest? That's the question, right? Yeah. So like if you can't, the full range of motion is what you want to do, right? Because you see a lot of guys get so tight, so bound up that they end up like having the bar up under their chin and they can barely get it down. Yeah. Like, so if you can, you really want to press in the full range of motion. I'm a big believer in that, whether you're using, I'm making my Colby Parker. So really if you're using a normal barbell or dumbbells, full range of motion, because you see a lot of guys, and you can handle more weight, you go shorter range of motion, absolutely, without a doubt. But like over time and over years of lifting, I really believe if you're not going through a full range of motion, you're going to lose that. right? And like you want your muscle to be long, you want to go through a full range of motion much as you can. So if you can get down to your chest and always train, like it might take you a little bit, like as you get bigger, to get it down to your chest. You might have to work and warm up a little bit, but don't like forget to stretch, forget to be mobile, right? So you're gonna get more development that way. So really from here, so we got the base going, we got the core tight, like everything's happening good. You're locked in. Try to get it down. Like this is good. Like your shoulders are back. You don't want to like overly have your upper body coming back too much to try to make that happen.
Yeah, some
so
people
this is
hurt their back.
Exactly. Like that would be terrible. Like and you see guys that do that, like they're back and they're trying to like press like this, turn it into an incline, right? Like instead of an overhead. So really from here, what you're gonna do, Mike, is go ahead and like you're tucked in, like you should feel tight through your upper back here, and then you're gonna initiate like anterior delt and triceps gonna kick in, and really once you get past your, like start moving past your face, you're gonna wanna push your head through the bar, and then you get it back over your head, if that makes sense. So you're back, right there.
So if you could just kind of moving your head out of the way for a second, and then driving your head
so
back.
So if you have your head, you're gonna pick something, like I really like to pick something to look at when I'm pressing, like not necessarily right in front of the face, but like at an angle up, right? So I pick something that's up, and then from there, it's gonna be right here, back down, and then you're gonna press, and once, like don't wanna throw the bar out in front. So like the worst,
up and back a little bit?
Up and back. So like as you're pressing, like it's gonna come here, and then you're gonna push your head, like your body's gonna come through the bar. So as soon as you can get past your head, like the best way to think of it is if your head wasn't even there, which some of us have bigger heads, so it's a problem, like, to get out of the way, you know? But if you could get your head out of the way and you could just press straight up, that's where you're gonna generate the most power.
You know, a lot of times, like in a bench press, when you get stuck, we kind of teach, and we'll bring the elbows in close, as you mentioned here.
Sure.
We try to get the upper back and the shoulders tight, as you mentioned here.
Sure.
We do the same exact thing on the bench press, and then if we get stuck, we're able to kind of flare the elbows out a little bit.
Sure.
And we push up and back at the same time.
Sure.
Do you feel it's a similar feel to sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have a groove, if you will, with overhead press. And if you get out of that line, you're done.
Yeah.
You know, like, so especially as the weight gets heavier, like if you, and now I should say there's definitely a difference between if you're trying to do a strict press or more of a push press. Right. Like you're gonna use your legs that way. This was more of a strict press, obviously, so you're just trying to build that up. So, I mean, I really think that there's a time and place for both of those, like in the training. You know,
even for like a bodybuilder, you think it's time to do maybe a push press or just always strict?
I think so. I mean, like there's a lot of ways you could throw your body a curveball. So you could do, maybe you do strict pressing up to a certain weight, and as soon as you can't quite handle that last weight, maybe then you put a little bit of legs into it to finish, you know? So like you could overload yourself that way, but once you kick the legs in, the bottom portion of the lift, like you're gonna get the power from your legs, and then you're just gonna press it out at the top. But you start the momentum, like all the leg drive is gonna help to get that bar moving. So there's a lot like with that, but as far as like this normal training, like it's almost easier to kind of stay with a strict press first and then bring in a push press, you know, like from there.
What about some of the cues that you give when you're trying to coach somebody through this? You know, what are some things you'd be shouting at them? You know, when again, going back to the bench press, the one type of press that I'm familiar with.
Right,
you know, we're always telling them, tuck the elbows, or flare at the top. What are some of the cues that you might give somebody if they're kind of getting stuck?
I mean, it's like definitely staying tight and breathing is very important, because if you forget to breathe,
so much of it's going to be generated from.
And if you have the bar like in the rack position, like at the top, if you let your air out and you're not breathing or you're holding your breath too long, this can be a problem, because then you get kind of lightheaded and dizzy. And, you know, it's easy to get that way. So it's kind of like if you do have to breathe at the top, it's like more of a short, shallow breath instead of a really big breath.
Yeah, that's actually problematic with an overhead press. Sometimes people pass out.
Yes,
I mean, even people that are healthy, it's not just a strongman thing.
Yeah, no, it's learning how to breathe, and that's a lot of different things we could talk about too, with breathing and staying tight and like being in the right body position. But you know, you don't want to hold your breath for too long either. So like this, if you were to do reps, for example, you're breathing every rep, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not holding your breath for the whole set. So you know, you breathe out as you're going up and finishing the lift. Take a breath, and you could, most of the time, like if I was going to do reps, I'd probably take a breath while the bar was above my head. So I breathe in, bring back down, and then it helps me to stay tighter holding that breath, and then drive again, and then breathe out as it's going
Let's
up.
see what it looks like when you do
Sure.
do some reps here.
So I'm gonna grab this a little bit wider than what Mike was
Kind
grabbing.
of like index finger on the rings about.
Yeah,
It's like maybe it's
somewhere in there, right? So as I come back, I'm gonna get in that position where my feet are a little bit, not super wide, not super narrow, just somewhere comfortable there. And that's gonna give me a good base to press from. But then I'm gonna pull back here, but my knees aren't super locked out.
Right.
They're not like really bent, just kind of a neutral position, if you will. Like I'm gonna squeeze my glutes, and especially on a strict press, like that's a good cue is to squeeze your glutes, because if your glutes are tight, like that, you're not gonna do anything. Like it really keeps you stable.
Yeah, you
like,
can't
from
lean
there.
back too
Yeah.
much. And, yeah.
So if your glutes, like tighten the glutes up there, and then as I drive this, I'm getting it down to my chest, upper back is tight, like shoulders locked in, and then I'm gonna start pressing from here, and as soon as I get it kind of past my chin, then I'm gonna start pushing my head through the bar,
Right.
so I'm back over my head. So just from there, back. So pop your head through.
I've heard in Olympic lifting and before where some people talk about kind of, covering the ear. Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to get your elbow like back by your ear?
Yeah,
That
if
kind
you
of a
can.
good
That's
guideline?
a good, I haven't heard that before, but it's something that like the more that you can get the bar back over your head and not in front of you, because if you, like this would be the way not to do it, but like if you were to take this here, like, and you were, let's just say this was a heavier weight and you were starting to struggle with it, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm trying to strict press this, like typically, like guys will again start to overly lean back and throw it in front of their body,
Right.
like this, and then like barely get it back, or like really have a hard time forcing their head through. So you're not gonna have nearly as much power out here as you're gonna have back here, if that makes sense. So,
Similar to a squat and everything else, yeah, you kind of want to keep it as much over your midline or your midfoot as possible.
exactly.
Yeah, this direction.
Yep. You're never ever like, and this would apply to anything, but you're never gonna have as much pressing power if you're out in front of your body. Like you want to stay in that line as much as you possibly can. So
It looks like having big arms plays into it too, because when you're in that bottom position, you really look locked and loaded. Your bicep and forearm.
Yep.
You got a lot of good compression there, a lot of good tightness.
yes,
To basically start
Yep.
to lift.
Yeah, if you could, the tighter you can get, I think with this, like you're locked in, generate more power, right? So it's kind of like that baseline start. If you really build up, like that's going to be built up through training, So it's the more training time you put into it, the better you're going to be, and that's like it's building everything. So, let's just say that you're great at overhead press. You don't want to forget about training your back, because having a big, solid back is going to help you generate more power here. So it kind of all works together. All the training works together. It's like a big puzzle.
Right.
You put it all together. It's awesome.
Yeah.
What about some variety? Like let's say you're at a commercial gym, you don't have
Sure.
tons of variety.
Sure.
Or you're just at a gym that maybe doesn't have a lot of different barbells and things that you have access
Absolutely.
to. You have, dumbbell presses would be good.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. I would. Yeah, you could absolutely rotate that in. I
Throw in
would.
some hammer strength maybe even.
Yep. There's a lot of ways to train it. I think, like, if I had my choice, I would probably go with a barbell or dumbbells
Right.
over a machine. But a machine then is like an accessory, secondary movement.
Right.
Right. Like that's what I would do. I would really
To help with hypertrophy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So you could do more, quote unquote effort training
Right.
here, like with dumbbells potentially, and then maybe like bump the reps up on the second set, 8 to 12 reps on machines, or something like that. That's going to give you a little bit more volume.
What about a bench press?
Bench press would be great. Yep.
Is that something
I think that like for overhead pressing, like for me as an accessory movement, I pretty much always do some type of close grip press.
Okay.
Like, and I do some
do floor
incline
presses?
work, floor presses.
Okay.
I love.
Yeah.
Like any kind. I do board presses. Like I rotate in with that, chains and bands, and like I really try to generate a lot of power, because I feel like the stronger you can make your anterior delts and the stronger you can make your triceps, the more your overhead press is going to go up.
Right. Let's
So like
see,
you try to
let's see what it
overload
looks
that.
like we get some chains on it. That sounds like it'd be kind of a cool setup.
Yeah. So with the chain setup, like here we're using more of this is like
Strap.
an easy strap setup, and this is great for squatting, and you can use it for overhead press as well. If you don't have this or you don't want to buy the straps, you can also get feeder chains that would be just a smaller chain, and you can get this type of chain at any hardware store, really. And from here, all you would do with the feeder chain, instead of having a strap on the bars, you would just put it around the bars, and then you would shorten this up, right? So if you can picture that, I would just put a carabiner there, and I'd have it hanging like this. So it's just a feeder chain to hold the heavier chain. So that's an easy way to do that. And I
Might work a little better for how tall you are.
yes.
You don't really want the chain all the way off the ground.
So there's with this, yeah, you want to. It's kind of like a bench press. If you were going to use chains with a bench press, you'd want to have the chain deload at the bottom as much as possible, and then like you'd want to get as much of it off the ground as you can through the range of motion. So yeah, it's perfect. Good. These are barely touching the ground when Mike's pressing. That's awesome, man. Push that head through. Perfect. Yeah, it looks great. So you feel like the chain is kind of making him stabilize a little bit more, like through the lift and at the top. So
So you
like
can
really,
even potentially set the chains up in some different spots. Like if you have a specific sticking point that's maybe like right here,
yep.
you could set the chains up to kick in even harder.
I really think that a lot of times people with overhead pressing, they forget, like, I feel like bench, like it's such a normal thing, you know, chains, bands, whatever,
Yeah.
like we're gonna change the range of motion. Right. We're gonna, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like with overhead press, a lot of times it's almost like not thought about for some reason. And I feel like, especially for overhead pressing, like bands are awesome.
Yeah.
Chains, awesome. Like, and then you also can play with like the range of motion. Like if you're having a kind of a lockout problem, then maybe set this up in a power rack and like take it from different heights, you know? So it's kind of like you have to identify your weaknesses, if you will, you know, like, and then try to address them, you know? But adding the accommodating resistance to the bar, it's really going to work that mid to upper end of the lift anyway, because you're going to overload the top end, right? Yeah. And any overhead press, typically what you see, if somebody's going to miss it, they're going to miss it at the top because they can't lock it out.
What are some things you've done for your shoulders just to keep them healthy? Because, you know, this has got to really, you know, make your shoulders take a pounding, right?
Yeah. Like I'm working, like constantly, shoulder mobility is huge. Because the shoulder joint does so much. So if you can keep that healthy and mobile and moving, and you're going through a full range of motion, I mean, that's huge. It's huge. And so it's something where I'm constantly doing that. I warm up also very well.
I saw you doing some band pull parts and stuff. Maybe
just
do a little demo and some of that stuff.
So really, they're vertical pull parts and then horizontal pull parts. So really all you'd want to do is just stand on the band like this. And this is one of the first things that I'll do in my warm-up, like after I've started moving. So just grab...
Stop right there for a second. Let me get back up there and get it from another angle. So just pick up where you were. That is, pick up where you were.
Okay. So basically, I just stand on the band. It's right like under my feet, and I'm just standing on it. So this is just a mini band. I'll also do this with like a monster mini, but that's about as much as you need, even if you're very strong. So it's more about just opening up and being flexible. So from here, all you're gonna do is you're gonna pull this up and over your head like that, and then open up back, right? So you're gonna open up as you come over your head, and then I come back down, and then I go right back up, over, back, down. So I'm constantly moving. It's never a static stretch, right? So like you're opening up and going back, and like you should be, like the excuse with all these guys that are somewhat big is say, like, oh, I'm big, I can't do it. I can't, oh, I'm too tight, I can't. Like, that's crap, man. Like, you have to work on your weaknesses. And if being, like, the tighter you are, the more susceptible you are to getting injured. Like, why would you want to have that, you know? So this is something that's a vertical pull apart. It's just something that you could really throw in as part of your warm up. And I've used that for years. And then a horizontal pull apart, so you just take the mini band and just double it over, right? And obviously the closer you grab this, the tighter it's gonna get. You know, if you're kind of a beginner, like you can put it out a little bit wider.
Just grab one part of the band.
Yeah, or you could just grab one side of it too. So from here, all you're gonna do is just basically put your arms straight out in front of you, and then just pull apart. Bring it back to your chest, here. So that's gonna get your upper back moving, it's gonna open your chest up, make your shoulders more mobile. So those are definitely two movements that Yeah, right. Plus you get a nice little pump, right? Like
It's blood going.
it's part of the game, man.
How would you set up bands for the overhead? Is that too
So
complicated for this
yes, no, not really.
Yeah.
No.
Like, how do you set them up sometimes at your gym?
Yeah, so I would. I mean, I have a power rack that has band attachments, but for this, all we would do is grab a pair of light dumbbells.
Would you,
Could you even do this
would
guy?
you go this way, that strength, or would
Like
you
this?
have it be like looped? Would it be more like that?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Right?
Yep, exactly.
So whatever you can get it underneath. A
Yeah, I
dumbbell
mean,
or
if
whatever.
you put it around a dumbbell, I would just
Right.
choke it around the
Yeah.
dumbbell and then put it up.
Right.
Like you can. These are gonna.
That's
these
gonna
are
be pretty
probably-
good as
Yeah, it's
you
gonna
go
be
to
a lot.
press.
Yeah.
It's gonna kick in hard.
Yeah. So I mean, these mini bands are probably going to give you about 20 pounds a piece,
Right.
25 pounds a piece at the top. Monsters are going to be closer to 30, 35, like at the top, and that's just because I weighed that. But it's like
And
one
you're
of those
taller,
things.
right?
Yeah. So bands are, and that's too. Like I tell the guys all the time, like some of the shorter guys deadlifting. with
Yeah.
bands. It's just the way it is. It's kind of like one of those things. Like it's accommodating resistance. So the longer you stretch a band, the more tension you're going to get out of it. You know. So it's just kind of. Yeah, man. I actually, if I had to choose one of the two, I'd probably choose bands.
Yeah, with
Just to
overhead.
work with.
Well, and
Yeah.
the bands would be easier for people that are,
Yeah.
watching this, that need to go in a commercial gym. It'd be harder for them to lug
Yeah.
a bunch of chains in there. Maybe the gym would allow them to have
Yeah.
chains, but it'd be
Yeah.
a little easier to
Yeah, these are really
have
simple,
some bands in your bag.
simple, light, easy, and two, like you don't need like the feeder, any kind of feeder system. These you can easily choke around. Like we can even throw this dumbbell in here. Like I can show you what you do. So you just grab some kind of dumbbell, set it up by the rack that you're going to press in,
Yep.
and all you do is just choke the dumbbell, or choke the band, I should say, around the dumbbell from there. So you just got it set up like that. You can grab a couple 5-pound plates, put them on the sides of the dumbbell so it
Doesn't roll
doesn't
away.
doesn't roll. And you just basically kind of loop that up over the bar, and then you got plenty of tension there. And so you can see what happens. Obviously, as you put it on the bar, go to press, not as hard here. It's going to be a lot harder up there.
So the point is, you like variety when you're doing pressing.
I like a lot of variety.
You like to mix it up from one week to the next, so there,
Well-
you could use chains one week,
Yeah.
perhaps bands the next.
I like to have fun. I
Right.
like to have fun with training. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's serious and like we're getting work done. But like the thing is I'm very motivated by doing something different,
Right.
right? So like if I know this week, hey, I'm gonna come in and press with bands on my overhead. That's awesome. Like that's gonna be fun. And then the next week, if I'm gonna do chains, it's fun. And then you see, all right, now we're gonna go back to straight weight. Let's see how can I accelerate better. Like
Right.
what's the carryover that's happening from doing these, training blocks,
Right.
if you will. Like so, like maybe
Yeah,
I'll
you're
put
trying to
together
beat
4
like
weeks,
a-
3 or 4 weeks, and then go.
Right. Are you trying to beat like an old PR, an old personal
I
best
will.
that you may have
Absolutely.
had?
Yeah. I mean, there's different things that I do, but I'm very motivated by those goals.
Right.
Like I like setting these goals and making things happen, and it's kind of like I don't like to be stagnant with my training, and it's not necessarily. There's a lot of theories on how quickly the body will adapt to training and this type of thing, but it's not necessarily that I'm worried about that too much. I'm worried about keeping it interesting for me,
Yeah.
right? Like I want it to be interesting. I want it
Yeah,
to be
I've always
fun.
kind of said that's the greatest thing about the West Side Barbell Method, the conjugate system, utilizing lots of different exercises to make one type of movement stronger is the
Yeah.
fact that you get
It's
to
awesome.
party all the time
Yeah.
by doing a lot of different exercises and having fun with it. Doing those deadlifts with you the other day, I don't know what my max is, so
Sure,
that
sure.
was my max. That was a PR.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
So every time you're trying something new in a gym, it's another opportunity for another PR.
Absolutely, which is a good thing mentally too.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Keeps you fresh, excited, and anything you can do with training to make it exciting.
Right.
Like if you go to the gym and all these people have this workout they've been doing for, or you talk to some people, I shouldn't say all these people, but you talk to some people and they've been doing the same workout for years on end. Every Monday I do this, every Wednesday I do that. How can you do that?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could do that.
We put less effort in.
Oh, it's terrible. That
What's
would
your
be
best overhead in competition?
Best overhead
Maybe
on
with a
an
log or
axle
Okay.
that I had to clean from the ground was 205 kilos, which is 451 pounds. So I've done more in training, but in competition,
Right.
that's the more.
So
that
basically,
most-
your point through all this is
Yeah.
that if you used 100 or if you used 450 pounds
Sure.
with an axle, and then tried to do 455 the next week and 460, you'd just be bored. You'd be tired of it.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be something that's stimulating you.
So I would throw an axle, like I could use an axle for this setup instead of a normal bar.
Right. You
and then
mix
I would,
it in
I could throw in chains, bands, you know, like something, and then I could vary the height, I could vary the range of motion, like a lot of things could happen to get that better. If I feel like I need to work on lockout, maybe I would do like a full range of motion press first, and then do some lockout work after that, right? Like as a secondary movement, and then maybe move to like some type of machine press or even a dumbbell press for reps to get some more volume in. So there's a lot of things you can do to play with it. Like, so I really try to focus on everything from building up maximal strength to having more of like a repeated effort, like more volume, and then also doing some dynamic work. And like dynamic work for overhead, like you can play with that as well. It's could kind of be like bench, dynamic bench. Like you could do dynamic
short rest
overhead.
period, trying to do them faster.
Yeah, but I mean, it's always like, always try to lift too explosively. Like that's one thing, is I think a lot of people get in this, you don't want to do reps like with the tempo. You could play with the tempo a little bit, but it's always like, for me, I always like pause at the bottom and I always lock out at the top, and I hold my lockouts. And I think, you know, especially being a competitor, like
it's how you're judged.
Yeah. If you can't get a down call, it doesn't matter if you lifted it. So that's one thing I remember. But I always like, I feel like you recruit more muscle if you lift explosively. So I always try to move the weight as fast as I can.
Yeah, and tempo stuff might be more for like a little bit of assistance, accessory work at the end.
Sure. And you can play with some time under tension, like different things, you can throw that in. And it's always throwing your body curveballs. And that's really nice. Like with training, there's so many different things you could do. Like I could go for years and not do the same workout, right? Like I really could.
Yeah.
And it's like so don't get stagnant. Like if you're getting stagnant, or you're maybe it's because you're not setting enough goals, or maybe it's because you're doing the same thing too many times and it's not fun, right? Like training should always be fun. This is awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like I just get excited. Like we're doing this video and I'm pumped. I want to lift some damn weight, you know? Like that's how it is. It's just get your blood pumping, you know what I'm saying? So.
All right, well that's overhead pressing with the world's strongest man, Brian Shaw.